Looking for magic cards? At flipsidegaming.com you can now use the promo code LVD to get a 10% discount on orders over $10 while supporting the channel at the same time. Hello and welcome to another Patreon bonus video. Today we're taking a look at a legacy deck called Zombardment, which is this grindy graveyard-based deck that plays creatures like Gravecrawler and Bloodghast, and then sacrifices those for value to all sorts of things, including a Goblin Bombardment, which is where the name comes from, a 2-mana enchantment that lets us sacrifice a creature to deal 1 damage to any target, and of course with the recursive creatures like Gravecrawler coming back from the graveyard, and Bloodghast coming back if we play a land, we can use them multiple times to deal damage to various things. So going over the entire deck list, I've tried to split the deck up in multiple categories. Starting out with the Disruption package, we've got 3 copies of Thoughtseize as hand disruption, alongside the full 4 copies of Cabal Therapy, which of course also plays very well with our Gravecrawler and Bloodghast, since we can sacrifice them to flash back Cabal Therapy and name another card to get out of the opponent's hand. So these are the disruptive cards that should help us stay alive against the combo decks in the format. Then in the next category we've got some of the enabling cards. We've got 4 copies of Stitcher Supplier, which helps us put the top 3 cards of our library into our graveyard when it enters the battlefield or dies. And it's also a zombie, so we can replay Gravecrawler from the graveyard if we control a Stitcher Supplier. So this helps us fill the graveyard and then helps us get back Gravecrawlers. And of course sacrificing a Stitcher Supplier is also pretty valuable since we get the trigger once again. Next up we've got 4 copies of Faithless Looting to help us draw through our entire deck and find the missing pieces. And then we've got 4 copies of Entomb, which also helps us find specific cards to put into our graveyard, whether that's a Gravecrawler or a Bloodghast, or as we'll see in a second, maybe a Bridge from Below. So just a nice card to enable some of our synergies. And next up we have our creatures, which are the key part of the deck, 4 copies of Gravecrawler and 4 copies of Bloodghast. And next up we've got 4 copies of Carrion Feeder, which can also help us sacrifice our creatures for value, putting a +1/+1 counter on it. And it's also a zombie to help us replay Gravecrawler from the graveyard. And then we've got some of the engine cards here. We've already covered Goblin Bombardment, which can sacrifice our creatures to deal damage. Then we also have a 1-off copy of Phyrexian Altar, which is a 3-mana artifact that lets us sacrifice a creature to add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool. So also very useful at sacrificing our creatures to generate mana so we can do more things with it. And of course Phyrexian Altar combined with Gravecrawler, if we have a zombie in play, means that we can repeatedly keep replaying Gravecrawler out of the graveyard. Of course, it does have to start generating some value somehow, which is where Bridge from Below comes in, a 3-mana enchantment that we don't actually want to cast, since it only does something when it's in our graveyard, which is also where Entomb comes in handy, since we can search up our Bridge from Below with Entomb and put it into our graveyard. And then when Bridge from Below is in our graveyard, whenever one of our creatures die, we get to generate a 2/2 zombie token to put into play. And of course, if we've got the Phyrexian Altar plus Gravecrawler loop going, then we can start generating an infinite amount of 2/2 zombie tokens, since the Phyrexian Altar pays for the Gravecrawler, and of course by sacrificing Gravecrawler we trigger the Bridge from Below, so we get to make an entire board full of zombies. And then our final category is the value creatures. We've got 3 copies of Dark Confidant to help us draw additional cards, and of course the converted mana costs of the cards in our deck are very low, so on average we might just take 1 damage for each card we draw, which is a pretty great deal. And then we have also got 1 copy of Grim Lavamancer to help us deal with opposing small creatures, exiling 2 cards from our graveyard to deal 2 damage, so that's also a nice addition to the deck. Then going over our mana base, we've got a total of 20 lands. We've got 3 Badlands, the red-black dual land, also 2 copies of Bayou, the green-black dual land, which is for our sideboard cards. Then we've got a total of 8 fetch lands, 3 Bloodstained Mires, 2 Marsh Flats, and 3 Polluted Deltas. We've got 2 copies of Phyrexian Tower, which is another sacrifice outlet that can help us generate double black whenever we sacrifice a creature, otherwise just taps for colorless. And then we also have a 1-off Undiscovered Paradise, which is a pretty neat combo with Bloodghast, since it's a land that taps for any color of mana, but on our next turn we have to return it back to our hand. So that means that we have a land that we can keep replaying over and over again to trigger Bloodghast's landfall ability to get it back from the graveyard every turn essentially. And then we've got 3 basic swamps and 1 Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, which can also turn all our lands into swamps, which helps when we're trying to cast our double black spells. And then going over the sideboard, we've got 2 copies of Surgical as Graveyard Hate, Engineered Explosives as kind of a catch-all answer, Dark Blast if we need to deal with multiple 1 toughness creatures. We've got a Power Blast against the blue decks, Pithing Needle as a pretty versatile answer to certain lands or planeswalkers. We've got a Nature's Claim to blow up artifacts and enchantments on the cheap. Null Rod against artifact-based decks. Golgari Charm as another versatile answer to various things. Ancient Grudge for artifacts. Abrupt Decay is another catch-all answer. We've got a Chains, which is also nice against most of the blue decks. We've got an Urborg Justice against creature decks. And double Magus of the Moon against lands-based decks. So that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the play. Yeah, this hand's not amazing. We do have Cabal Therapy to try and punch a hole in the opponent's hand. Don't have any of our real synergistic cards, but we do have an Entomb which can go get one of our zombies, I guess. So I think we'll keep. And we could Cabal Therapy on turn 1, but we don't really know what to name. So I think we'll probably lead with the Entomb here. And I'm thinking of getting a Gravecrawler. So we can just say go here, even though we could main phase the Entomb. Just want to kind of wait and see what the opponent is up to. Alright, turn 1 Mountain. Could be a burn deck, as we see Goblin Guide. Alright, so against the burn deck, what do we want to name? There's a lot of different burn spells they could have, of course. And we reveal Dark Confidant on top. Alright, I don't think we want to draw that, so yeah, let's Entomb. And what are we searching for? So against burn, my guess is we still go for the Gravecrawler here. And then we'll have to figure out what to name against burn. So here I think we just play Carrion Feeder and then replay Gravecrawler from the graveyard instead of going for the Cabal Therapy. And then maybe next turn we can set it up. So our creatures can't block, so blocking Goblin Guide's not going to be an option, but at least we start pressuring the opponent somewhat. And I don't think we're going to end up playing the Dark Confidant in this matchup. Alright, second guide. It's getting a little scary. And a Lava Spike. Alright, at least we've got double swamp, so Price of Progress is not going to be an issue. And a Thoughtseize on top, which kind of helps because now we know what to name with Cabal Therapy. Don't have any red mana for Bombardment. We're going to be taking 4 from these guides. So don't love our position. But what's the alternative? Playing Dark Confidant and trying to block? Doesn't seem great. So let's Thoughtseize. Take a look at their hand. And their hand is Sulfuric Vortex and Chain Lightning. So yeah, I think we're just gonna take the Vortex and then Cabal Therapy, Chain Lightning. And then we somehow have to outrace these Goblin Guides, which is not gonna be easy. So yeah, the burn matchup is probably pretty rough, if I had to guess. Just because our deck is pretty grindy, it's not great at presenting a very fast clock unless we've got a combo with Bridge from Below. And our interaction being discard is fine, but it's not a permanent answer. So we're at 5, any burn spell pretty much kills us now. Still no red mana for Bombardment, so we can't take out the Goblin Guides. We can start growing the Carrion Feeder and get it pretty big, but I don't know if that's really going to help. Alright, so our opponent pretty much has to draw lands for a couple turns here, so what's the best way for us to present a fast clock? Probably want to lead with a Gravecrawler, sack it to Carrion Feeder, replay it from the graveyard, do it again, and then sacrifice it once more. So we'll sack it twice, and then replay it and attack for 5. So we are getting in there, but we're definitely not going to outrace our opponent in the spot. So I'm not sure what we can hope to draw here. So both guides getting in there. Reveals Bloodstained Mire, which we will not be able to sacrifice. So we're down to 1. Opponent did draw at least 1 land here, but a Lava Spike is going to finish us off. Alright. So we got to do most of our thing, but our opponent was just fast enough and our disruption not relevant enough. So how do we want to sideboard against burn? Interesting question. I think Explosives is probably too slow. Golgari Charm can blow up Sulfuric Vortex and maybe an Eidolon of the Great Revel. So that might be worth it. Abrupt Decay can kind of do the same, but can also deal with Goblin Guides and other small creatures. Don't think we want Nature's Claim. Magus doesn't do much. Ancient Grudge is bad. Pyroblast is bad. Urborg Justice could be okay, but also seems pretty slow. Dark Blast doesn't do much, except for maybe kill a Grim Lavamancer. And yeah, Chains and Surgical don't do much, so yeah, don't have much to bring in for the matchup. Just maybe 3 removal spells. And what are we cutting? Probably Dark Confidant. Like, drawing extra cards is useful for sure. And we are, on average, only losing 1 life maybe. But 1 life is still pretty relevant. Like, most of our cards are okay. I think Thoughtseize on average is probably fine. So yeah, I think we're just cutting the Dark Confidants to make room for some removal. And see how it goes. Alright, we're on the play. And this hand's pretty spicy. We've got Supplier to fill the graveyard, Bombardment which we can play this time around, Cabal Therapy to cast twice. So my guess is we just want to lead with Therapy and name Goblin Guide, since we don't have a great answer to Goblin Guide right away other than blocking it with Supplier. And that'll inform our decision for next turn, and we can go Supplier into Flashback Therapy. And do we get a Swamp or play Badlands? Probably just playing the Badlands. We might need to get a green mana, we'll see. So let's Therapy, name Goblin Guide. And their hand is lots of burn spells, and their creature is Monastery Swiftspear and not a Goblin Guide, sadly. Alright, well, it's going to be an uphill battle. So let's put these over here. So they've got a Chain Lightning, 3 damage. Rift Bolt, 3 damage to stun. Swiftspear is a creature with prowess. Searing Blood can kill one of our creatures and deal damage. Fire Blast can sack 2 mountains and deal 4 damage. And then Lava Spike, 3 damage, so a lot of damage. Only 1 land at the moment, but they're still going to be able to cast most of their spells. So there's the Bloodstained Mire. And we're going to see a turn 1 Swiftspear here. Oh, instead they top decked the Goblin Guide. Well, must be nice. Well, now we could at least name Monastery Swiftspear with Cabal Therapy Flashback. At least the Goblin Guide found us some lands, which is nice. So let's fetch a Swamp first. Play Supplier. See what we mill. Phyrexian Altar. Another Supplier. Nothing relevant. Alright, let's Flashback Therapy. And we'll name Monastery Swiftspear. It's a little awkward that we're getting rid of the creature when they are holding this many burn spells, when we have the Goblin Bombardment that can potentially answer the Swiftspear, but I think it's going to end up doing more damage in the long run, and then we'll just have to say go here. So there's Chain Lightning, down to 14, Lava Spike, down to 11, and then Goblin Guide down to 9, and Fire Blast puts us at a virtual 5 life here already. So their hand is Rift Bolt, Searing Blood, Fire Blast. And a Thoughtseize can take the Fire Blast, I guess. So let's Thoughtseize our opponents. Take a Fire Blast. And then we'll play the Paradise. And play Bombardment. Instead of playing Bloodghast and giving them a target for Searing Blood. And next turn we will be able to kill the Goblin Guide at least. So technically speaking, we're not dead yet. By playing Bloodghast, sacking it, dealing 1 damage, and then getting it back and doing it once again. Opponent suspends Rift Bolt, so we're at a virtual 2 life here. Gravecrawler's an interesting draw too. So now we can start getting value from our Bombardment, still not giving the opponent any targets for Searing Blood. So the plan is to play Bloodghast, sack it to Bombardment. And then I think I'm just playing the Badlands here. Get it back. And then sack it again. Killing the Goblin Guide. And then we can play the Gravecrawler. If our opponent tries to target it with Searing Blood, then we can just sack it in response to the Bombardment. Since the way Searing Blood is worded, it deals 2 damage to target creature, and when that creature dies this turn, Searing Blood deals 3 damage to the controller, but if we sack it in response, then the Searing Blood will just fizzle. Since unlike Searing Blaze, it does only have 1 target, whereas Searing Blaze has 2 different targets, being 1 the player and 1 the creature. So Rift Bolt puts us to 2, but our opponent still having 3 cards in hand. I can't imagine them not having a burn spell here. Eidolon of the Great Revel is interesting. I mean, we can just kill it, we don't have to really trigger it. and a Thoughtseize, which we can't cast. So Undiscovered Paradise is a nice combo with our Bloodghast here. So what's the plan? Attack with Gravecrawler, opponent's gonna take it, and then we can get rid of the Eidolon by sacking Gravecrawler and Bloodghast. So let's start by attacking. Opponent blocks, interesting. Now we get to play the Paradise to get back Bloodghast, and then have it at the ready to sacrifice. Pass a turn. And yep, our opponent found a Fire Blast to deal 4 damage to the face, and that's gonna do it. Alright, well, burn, pretty rough matchup. Don't think we're winning this most of the time, but we still managed to show off some of the neat synergies that the deck has, and show how we can play a very grindy game against the fairer decks. Alright, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the play. And how about this hand? Yeah, it's a little land heavy, but Faithless Looting can help. And yeah, Thoughtseize into Dark Confidant. It's like we're playing Modern Junt here. And I think we'll lead with Polluted Delta, make him think we're some sort of Grixis deck. Get our Badlands. And Thoughtseize, see what's up. And our opponent's on, looks like Storm combo. Yep, see Ad Nauseam, Burning Wish, Chromox and Dark Ritual. Alright, so their only mana accelerators being Chromox and Dark Ritual. Dark Ritual gives them the most mana. Burning Wish can find all sorts of things. Ad Nauseam, of course, the real win condition here. So we could just take the Ad Nauseam, or we could try and deny them mana by taking Dark Ritual or a Chromox. I think taking Ad Nauseam might be okay here. It's just a scarier card, but I might be wrong there. So our opponents on the Ad Nauseam Tendrils Storm combo deck, they're gonna try and play lots of cards that generate mana, and then top off their curve with a Storm card or an Ad Nauseam, which can draw them into a bunch more cards. Since their converted mana cost is very low, having lots of 1 and 0 mana spells. Alright, opponent just gets a land, says go. We're just gonna play Dark Confidant, and might as well just fetch. I guess we can make him think we're on Junt by grabbing a Bayou. Play Dark Confidant, say go. And then next turn we're going to start digging for more hand disruption with the looting. And it's going to be a Brainstorm, so our opponent gets to sculpt their hand. Maybe put a valuable card on top of their deck so they can protect it from hand disruption. And with a fetch land they can always decide to shuffle away. So lots of interesting things one can do with a Brainstorm. And opponent plays a Scalding Tarn. Let's see if they shuffle right away or if they're just gonna pass it back. Alright, it's gonna be a Chromox, imprinting the Burning Wish, and then a Lotus Petal. So our opponent might be going off here as they get a Badlands. So they've got 3 mana at the ready. Dark Ritual makes that 2 more. And yep, there's Dark Ritual in 2. Another Cabal Ritual. So they've got lots of mana, 1 card left in hand, and it's probably not a Bloodstained Mire. And it's going to be a Burning Wish, looking for a sorcery out of their sideboard. And it's going to be Empty the Warrens. Alright, so they're just going to make a bunch of tokens here. Yeah, their storm count is pretty high. So they made 14 goblins, and yeah, we're going to have a hard time beating those. Bloodghast revealed with Dark Confidant, not ideal, and Entomb. So what can Entomb find us? Not much that's relevant here. So we're probably casting a Faithless Looting here. See what we can find. Another Faithless Looting. Let's just fetch another Badlands, I guess. Looting again. And there's Bridge from below. Alright, so we're pretty dead to the Goblin tokens here. Don't think we can find anything that saves us. So let's move on to sideboarding. Chains is pretty good against Brainstorm. We've got Engineer Explosives and Golgari Charm as answers to Empty the Worms if they go that way. Ancient Grudge can blow up Chromoxes and maybe Lion's Eye Diamonds before they get the chance to sacrifice them. So it's also consideration. Surgical's probably pretty good. Can get rid of one of their key combo pieces. Is there anything else we want? Maybe a Pyroblast. It's not like they're playing a ton of blue cards, so it seems a little bit narrow. Null Rod can stop some of the artifacts from producing mana, so that's probably worth it as well, even though it's a combo with explosives. And then Pithing Needle can't stop mana abilities. I don't think we want that one. So between these, which ones do we want and which cards are bad. So we definitely want all the hand disruption. Grim Lavamancer seems a bit slow. Then Carrion Feeder is probably one of the cards we can cut pretty easily. So we've got room for about 5 cards. So Surgical definitely. I think we want to hedge against Empty the Warrants, so Explosives and Golgari Charm. I like Null Rod. And then don't have room for these. So I don't know if we need the chains here. And Abrupt Decay is, I think, narrower than some of the cards we brought in. Although Grudge being a free mill with cards like Stitcher Supplier is pretty nice. But I don't see anything else we really want to cut. Maybe cut like one Bombardment since it doesn't do a whole lot and bring in a Grudge. Yeah, we'll try something like this. Would like to be on the play. And yeah, this hand seems reasonable. We've got Therapy on 1. We've got Supplier to sacrifice to it on the flashback. Alright, so what are we naming with Cabal Therapy is a question. Could name Dark Ritual, which is the more explosive card. Could name, who knows, Brainstorm maybe. I think I'm gonna name Dark Ritual. And see what they're working with. Alright, double Chrome Mox, Echoing Truth, Infernal Tutor, Diamond, Rite of Flame. Alright, so didn't get to take anything, but now we know their hand. So our opponent brought in an Echoing Truth. And they've got the Infernal Tutor plus Lion's Eye Diamond combo. So yeah, they can definitely generate a ton of mana here. So let's see how dead we are. They can probably pretty easily imprint Echoing Truth with one of the Chrome Mox. And their opponent imprints Echoing Truth with Chrome Mox. Let's see if they're going off. They aren't. Alright, so we could just grab the Infernal Tutor with Stitcher Supplier on Cabal Therapy here. Or we could just play Null Rod, which shuts off all the artifact mana. Kind of like Null Rod here. As we draw Bloodghast. Yeah, let's just Null Rod them. Grab a Bayou. Play Null Rod. And see what they do about it, since now that they got rid of the Echoing Truth, they can no longer bounce it. Alright, so we stalled our opponent on mana here, so now we have to try and close out the game as soon as possible. Alright, opponent does nothing. Get to untap. My guess is we lead with the Stitcher Supplier here, see what we draw. Don't think we want to entomb anything quite yet. And what did we mill? Gravecrawler is good. Thoughtseize land. So we can replay Gravecrawler from the graveyard if we want to. Or we can just play a Bloodghast. I kind of like Gravecrawler, sack to Cabal Therapy, and then replay Gravecrawler. Let's play Polluted Delta. Sack to get another Badlands, I guess. And then we're probably just taking the Infernal Tutor out of their hand. And their hand was Burning Wish, Tutor, Chrome Mox, Rite of Flame. Alright. And then we'll replay Gravecrawler. And say go. So I've got a little bit of pressure going. Next turn we can play Bloodghast and maybe Entomb to get another one. Or get another Gravecrawler. Could have also Entombed for a Bridge from Below. That way when we sacrifice the Gravecrawler to Cabal Therapy, we would have made a 2/2 zombie token, but we don't have any other sacrifice outlets currently. So it didn't seem great. So Null Rod seems to be doing a pretty good job here. But of course a Burning Wish means that they could find any number of ways to answer it for a turn. And they often only need one turn to get rid of a hate card to be able to go off. Urborg doesn't do a ton for us. So yeah, we're just attacking, entombing maybe Bloodghast, and then playing a land, playing a Bloodghast to add 4 power to the board. And when we have Undiscovered Paradise, Bloodghast seems pretty good. Although it's kind of a toss-up between Bloodghast and Gravecrawler at this point. Let's just entomb. And yeah, I don't think there's anything else we want. Could also go for Faithless Looting to flash it back. It seems kind of bad. I guess we could get another Cabal Therapy as well to flash it back and get another card out of the opponent's hands. That might actually be reasonable. Get the Burning Wish. Don't hate it. Alright, let's go for it. So let's Therapy the opponent, sacrificing Gravecrawler. And name Burning Wish. And their hand is double Chrome Mox, Rite of Flame. So yeah, now their hand is pretty empty. And then we'll just play Bloodghast. And replay Gravecrawler as well. Alright, so we've got 5 power in play, so we've got our opponent on a 3-turn clock. Opponent isn't doing much for a while, so hopefully their next couple of draw steps don't draw them out of it. Alright, so we get to untap, get our Undiscovered Paradise back, and Phyrexian Tower doesn't do a whole lot here, so let's just attack for 5. And we'll keep lands in hand, I think, in case we pick up a Faithless Looting, so we can discard. Alright, we untap, pick up Golgari Charm. Could potentially do some stuff, but we're just gonna send for 5. And pass the turn. And our opponent scoops it up. Awesome, so we managed to steal a game with our Null Rod here. So how do we want to adjust for game 3 here? Claim being a 1-mana answer to an artifact might be okay, but it just feels kind of bad, especially now that the opponent's gonna be on the play. They're gonna be a lot more explosive. Yeah, I think I'll stick to this. So in the previous game, our opponent had a window to generate a lot of mana, cast Infernal Tutor and go get something sweet. But they didn't pull the trigger, and we were able to capitalize. How about this hand? No disruption whatsoever, other than a surgical, so I don't think we can keep. And we're kind of in the same boat here. Only if the suppliers hit Cabal Therapy can we disrupt the opponent. Do we want to go to 5? We do have a Golgari Charm in case they go off with Empty the Warrens. And if the Stitcher suppliers mill a Cabal Therapy, we can flash it back. So, I mean, the hand's not great, but it's also not terrible. So I think I'll keep, definitely bottom the land. The best top deck would just be a Thoughtseize here on turn 1. Yeah, Stitcher Supplier's pretty nice combo with Cabal Therapy, since you can mill over Therapy and then sack Supplier right away, and mill over more goodies. Alright, opponent will keep their 7, leads with Bloodstained Mire and Underground Sea into Ponder. Alright. Yeah, it's definitely possible that we should have brought in the chains out of the sideboard, but it does feel a little bit slow. Alright, well, we top decked the Thoughtseize, that's what I was hoping for. So let's go for it. And our opponent's hand is Ad Nauseam, Rite of Flame, Cabal, Ritual, Tendrils, Echoing Truth. So they've got kind of 2 payoff cards, one being Ad Nauseam, one being Tendrils, although Ad Nauseam the scarier one of the 2. They've got 2 Rituals to make mana, and an Echoing Truth for interaction, which right now we don't really care about. So I think we just take the Ad Nauseam, which is a big payoff card, and then hope to survive for a while, but their hand can definitely generate quite a bit of mana. Get to untap, and Cabal Therapy, pretty excellent draw here. So we can lead with Stitcher Supplier, and then cast Therapy as well to get rid of one of their rituals, would be my guess. So I think we lead with Cabal Therapy, and I will name Cabal Ritual, and their hand was Chromox in addition to the hand we knew about. Alright, and now we get to play Stitcher Supplier, and then flashback the Therapy. And what did we mill? Nothing special. So let's flashback Therapy, sacking Stitcher Supplier, and I think we just name Rite of Flame now. Take them off the fast mana, leave them with Tendrils, Chromox, and Echoing Truth in hand. Alright, so we ripped apart the opponent's hand, and now we slowly have to start applying pressure with Gravecrawler and Supplier. And what did we mill? We milled over Ancient Grudge, so we do get to blow up an artifact here out of the graveyard, and a Bloodghast. So if we hit a land drop, we can get it back. I guess I could have considered playing the Stitcher Supplier before playing the land in case we hit a Bloodghast. Yeah, that was probably correct. Alright, and we found another Cabal Therapy, so we can keep ripping our opponent's hands to shreds. So I think we try and aggressively deny mana here, so we can Cabal Therapy naming Chromox, and then Ancient Grudge the Lotus Petal, but on the other hand I also want to start applying some pressure. I think the plan here is to Cabal Therapy the Chromox, and then I'm going to play the Gravecrawler to start applying a little bit more pressure. And then next turn we can Ancient Grudge the Lotus Petal. And it's going to be a Burning Wish. And our opponent got a Dark Petition. Alright. So we could get that with the Cabal Therapy flashback. And we picked up a land. So I think our plan is to Supplier first in case we hit another Bloodghast. And looks like we did. So we get to play our land, trigger both Bloodghasts, and then attack for 2. And it's probably safer to just Cabal Therapy away the Dark Petition here. Sacrificing either Gravecrawler or Supplier, probably Gravecrawler. Could also consider naming Echoing Truth so they can bounce the 2 Bloodghasts here, but I think I'm okay with that. So let's name Dark Petition, leave our opponent with Tendrils and Echoing Truth, and then I'm just gonna replay Gravecrawler. And I could have fetched the green source here to flash back our Ancient Grudge to blow up Lotus Petal, but I don't think 3 mana is all that scary right now, knowing their hand. So I think we can afford to wait, keep Bloodstained Mire to maybe re-trigger the Bloodghasts. So we picked up a Bayou. Let's get in there, and I'm expecting Echoing Truth on Bloodghast, but we'll see. Alright, opponent takes it, so they're down to 10. And yeah, I don't hate Ancient Grudge on Lotus Petal here. And we could Cabal Therapy again, since we've got one more in the graveyard, to name Echoing Truth or Tendrils. Don't know if that's worth it here, but it might be. And probably just gonna name the Echoing Truth here, since that's the most relevant card at the moment, it seems, but could definitely be making a mistake here, forgetting something important that I should be naming instead. But I'm just gonna go for it anyway. Could be sacking Supplier to try and get more food in the graveyard, but I actually think the 1 extra power in play could be relevant. And their opponent does fire off the Echoing Truth, bouncing the Bloodghast, but we did get an attack in at least. And I think we named Tendrils, but again I could be wrong here, and we should be naming something that could threaten to kill us if they top deck the right sequence. Their hand is Infernal, Tutor, Tendrils, so now they get to tutor for whatever they want, but they own 2 lands. And we're gonna replay Bloodghast. And replay Gravecrawler out of the graveyard. And we've got a 2-turn clock here. And they're gonna lead with a Brainstorm instead. Let's see if they find what they're looking for. We denied them of a lot of resources here, so they're gonna need to find multiple pieces to be able to go off. So the scariest card here is probably something like a Lion's Eye Diamond combined with Infernal Tutor, since with Lion's Eye Diamond and Hellbent on Infernal Tutor, they could generate a ton of mana and then get whatever they want. And yep, opponent did find a Lion's Eye Diamond here. 0 cards in hand, so they kept the Infernal Tutor on top to protect it from discard. And another Bloodghast to draw, so we're attacking for 9 damage here, which means that they can't fetch, which could be relevant, so yeah, let's go for it. Since I don't think Golgari Charm is going to be too relevant this turn. Alright, so we're presenting 9 damage. We definitely top decked very well in this third game. And it's going to come down to our opponent at 1 life, with Infernal Tutor, which can get whatever card they want. And they can no longer fetch with Polluted Delta, so they've got 5 mana. And 1 Infernal Tutor. Let's see what they do with it. Instead, our opponent kept the Ponder on top. Interesting. And they're sacking the Lion's Eye Diamond for triple black. Alright, let's see what happens. And their opponent decided to shuffle. So a 3 black mana floating from the Lion's Eye Diamond. Can our opponent get out of it at 1 life here? And our opponent scoops it up. Awesome. So we managed to beat Storm after getting demolished in game 1. Managed to come back with some timely Cabal rituals to disrupt the opponent's hand, and some recursive threats to pressure them, and yeah, we got the job done. Awesome. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the play. And what about this hand? It's a little on the slow side. Bridge in hand's a little awkward too. Don't have any of our recursive threats, but we do have the Thoughtseize and a Cabal Therapy with some creatures. And if we can get Bridge in our graveyard somehow, then we've got Altar to go with it. So I think we keep. So something like a Faithless Looting would go a long way here. Let's Thoughtseize, see what's up. And our opponent on a Leovold, Jace the Mind Sculptor Thoughtseize deck. So this is the 4-color control deck, if you will. Alright, so which card is more problematic here? Like, we don't really care about Thoughtseize too much. So my guess is we either take Leovold or Jace. They're both pretty good. My guess is we just take Leovold and then Cabal Therapy can maybe take the Jace later. So we're gonna see a turn 1 Thoughtseize most likely. Opponent gets an island and does nothing. Alright, so no early Thoughtseize. Grim Lavamancer's not bad. So now we can just Cabal Therapy to name Jace. Or we can run out the Grim Lavamancer. So Cabal Therapy here in the face of a potential Brainstorm would be bad. I think we'll lead with Grim Lavamancer and then wait a turn on Cabal Therapy. So now we see a Badlands into Inquisition of Kozilek. They might go after Cabal Therapy. And yep, there goes Cabal Therapy. So they still have a Thoughtseize and a Jace in hand. And Entomb is nice since it can help us find a Gravecrawler, which plays pretty well with what we've got going on here. So I don't mind attacking for 1. And I'm probably just going to Entomb a Gravecrawler now, to be honest. And say go. Lightning Bolt takes care of Grim Lavamancer. Inquisition takes our Phyrexian Altar, leaving us with double Carrion Feeder. And land is great since now we get to play Carrion Feeder, replay Gravecrawler, and then get rid of the Jace, which would otherwise run away with the game. So in your opponent's hand, Jace is gone. Alright, so that leaves Thoughtseize and Scalding Tarn in their hand. And we've got our Carrion Feeder Gravecrawler engine going now. Not the fastest way to kill, but pretty resilient. And if we can top deck a Faithless Looting to put the bridge in the graveyard, then we're off to the races. And the Thoughtseize is going to take the second Carrion Feeder. Alright, so opponent's got 1 card in hand. And another Entomb, so that could Entomb a bridge from below. Then we can replay Gravecrawler, sack it, make a zombie. That sounds pretty sweet. Yeah, let's go for it. What would be the alternative? Like, not sure what to name with Cabal Therapy at this point. Could just get a second Gravecrawler as well, but I think the bridge is going to work out better. So yeah, let's just get a bridge from below. Play Gravecrawler. Sack it with Carrion Feeder, make a zombie, and attack for 2. Alright, so we've got our engine going now. Let's see what our opponent comes up with. Another Ponder, that's fine. And our opponent packs it in. Alright, so got game 1 against 4-color Leovold. So how do we want to sideboard? So we could bring in Pithing Needle to name Jace. Pyroblast is going to be reasonable. Don't think we need Surgical, although it is pretty good against Snapcaster Mage. Dark Blast could be reasonable, takes out Snapcaster Mages, takes out Baleful Strix, which can be annoying, but don't think it's really necessary. And then Chain seems pretty great. And then we could also consider Magus of the Moon to just disrupt their mana, although it dies pretty easily to a Lightning Bolt still, but it's probably worth it. So Needle, Pyroblast, Chains, double Magus, I think is what we want. Our opponent could also be bringing in Ensnaring Bridge, but then we can just kill with Goblin Bombardment still, so I don't think we're too worried. So what do we take out? Opponent might also have some of their own Surgicals to disrupt our graveyard. Grim Lavamancer seems a bit too vulnerable, and then I think Carrion Feeders can go. It's usually one of the cards that's a pretty easy cut. And try something like this. And what about this hand? Double bridge in our opening hand kind of stings, since we only have the 2 copies. Do have Cabal Therapy to take a look. Dark Confidant to provide card advantage, although I imagine this one's going to be dealt with. Bloodghast can keep coming back and we can sack once to Therapy. Yeah, if it weren't for the double bridge, this hand would be quite good. So how good is it with double bridge in hand? Like, it's one looting away from being pretty amazing, but we're essentially playing a 5-card hand at the moment. I think I'm gonna keep. We are also playing against a deck with hand disruption, so if we go to 6 and they Thoughtseize us, then they might get rid of the only relevant card in our hand. And I guess there's a chance they Hymn to Turok us, and then we get to discard a bridge randomly, which would be pretty funny. Alright, so what to name with Cabal Therapy? I doubt they'll have left in Force of Wills. Could just name Leovold, could name Jace. Think I'm gonna name... Jace is still pretty far away, so I think I'm gonna name Leovold here. And their hand did have a Jace. Alright, we guessed wrong. Could be that we also should have just named Brainstorm, but oh well. So their hand is Brainstorm, Ponder, Jace, 2 lands. And our opponent's gonna Brainstorm. Yeah, I guess they do have more Brainstorms than they have Leovolts. And now a Ponder. Into Surgical the Cabal Therapy, that's too bad. Alright, so there goes that plan. So now our hope is that our Confidant survives and can draw some extra cards. Alright, let's just play Dark Confidant here. And there's a Baleful Strix. That's fine. Alright, so next turn Jace coming down is going to be an issue. So hopefully we can find an answer here. Magus of the Moon. Well, that's definitely a pretty good one here. We also have a Pithing Needle. I think we're just slamming Magus after getting a Swamp. And just try to mana screw our opponent. Opponent has a Brainstorm in response. So they can potentially find a Lightning Bolt here to deal with the Magus. Alright, opponent's got 3 mountains in play. Let's see how they deal with it. And our opponent's got a Surgical on their own land here. Interesting. So they want to just shuffle their library, I guess. Untaps. And do we get to untap with Dark Confidant? Looks like it. Alright, sweet. And Entomb can set up some neat synergies too here. Can definitely still Pithing Needle naming Jace as insurance. Don't have any zombies currently, so getting Gravecrawler doesn't do much, so we could get a Bloodghast instead. It's probably better. Our Cabal Therapies are gone, so that doesn't work. So yeah, let's Entomb, Bloodghast, and then we can play a land to trigger Bloodghast right now. Won't be able to play the one from hand, so I guess maybe playing the one from hand was more mana efficient. Is there anything else we want? We could also get a Looting. Discard double Bridge, which would be pretty useful. But I think I just like the pressure from Bloodghast here. Yeah, so probably should have just cast a Bloodghast from hand instead of Entombing, since we won't be able to use the Bloodghast from hand this turn anyway. So let's play a land, trigger Bloodghast, and then we'll play Pithing Needle naming Jace. And say go. Don't really want to attack into the Baleful Strix, but Bloodghast can attack into it more reliably. And our opponent's just gonna pack it in. They can't beat the Dark Confidant plus Magus of the Moon lock. Yeah, well, that's what you get for playing a greedy 4-color mana base, I guess. So that's gonna do it for today's gameplay. Thanks again to our legendary patron for supporting the channel and making this episode possible. But for now, I wanna thank everyone for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day. I also want to thank all my patrons for being part of the channel, and you can become a patron yourself today and decide the topic of future videos over at patreon.com/legendvd.